Neema Wala is a writer based in Chicago who's wanted to become an author since the age of 9, and she's on the line with us here to talk about her book, Cavan Unit. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
So, for the book, Cavan Unit, what's it all about?
So it's about this alien that tricks a teenage girl into becoming her apprentice. And each chapter alternates between like alien's point of view and the girl's point of view. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, the alien, her name is Cassia. The girl is Nisha. And I don't know, I think like part of what inspired it too was just seeing a lot of like, I know it's changed like, so much in the media these past 10 years, but like a lot of the narratives like in like books, in movies, TV, it's always centered around like male characters and stuff. And yeah, primarily like this is kind of supposed to be like a loose adaptation of Breaking Bad, but like it's kind of like all girls, and it's not like as dark and edgy. And like yeah, so with Cassia, it's like her like having life regrets about her career choices, and then just with Nisha coming of age stuff. And yeah, I don't think that's explored a lot, like primarily with female characters. I mean, it is now, but like with also what's considered classic. It's always like male centric stories, and then stuff that's supposed to be for like women or girls, it's always considered, oh, it's like trashy, subpar. And it's like, oh, this is for teenage girls, even though it's like meant to be, it's referenced as something like derogatory, not derogatory, but it's like, oh, like this is like worthless. This isn't like art. And I'm not saying this will be art or anything, but just like, get like that perspective out. And I don't know like if it'll ever become successful, but at least I put it out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, like a lot's changed like this past decade. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm hopeful.
And of course, you mentioned about stories like this typically being male centric, and sexism is actually a theme that's explored in the book. So, how do you tackle that issue within the story itself?
Well, I think the hardest part for me was I don't worrying about, there will be like MRA types and like, oh, this is like a man hating story, but it's like this isn't for you. But then, I thought about okay, like about these female characters like living like in a male dominated world, interacting with each other. And then like yeah, they do like deal with like there is this one like robots character in the book. I won't say much.
Yeah.
But just this like false sense of like girl power being marketed and just buying into lies. And like I feel like I like had that, I bought into those lies a lot growing up. And we don't know any better because of like, we're just impressionable and just take everything at face value, even if
Yeah.
it's supposed to be like uplifting.
So, what was the overall inspiration behind the book? Because you mentioned kind of loosely about Breaking Bad. Is that the sole inspiration, or were there other things
No,
as well?
no, there are like lots of other ones. And I don't know, it does kind of have like a cartoonish vibe as you read it. And then like I think like I also kind of poke fun at like the tropes of like the mad scientist, teenage hero. And then yeah, because I feel like with a lot of like stories about like teenage heroes, like it doesn't focus about them like, you should see them, yeah, you do like see them like have a double life and stuff. But yeah, they don't like they're not worrying about oh no, what if I fail that test, and breaking down under pressure because of all the secrets they have to hide.
So, did you draw from your own experience to capture the teenage experience in your writing?
Yeah, and like I grew up in the 2000s, the late 2000s, and yeah, it was like like Lindsay Lohan, like
Yeah.
Miley Cyrus era. And I don't know, just like watching TV growing up, I thought, oh, like like I their life looks so cool. And then also like even though like I went to like a pretty good school, like I just felt like kind of left out because a lot of the kids were richer and they wore designer clothes. And oh my god, yeah, like I could go on about how I would like beg my mom to take me to the mall every weekend so I could buy designer clothes.
Yeah.
It didn't work. But yeah, just like overcoming like all this like stuff with like it was just a very consumerist time. And I don't think it was, particularly healthy. And also like, every like author, like every I'm not saying I'm gonna be a classic author or anything, but like,
Yeah.
like every author, like say yeah, Fitzgerald, like, he lived during the jazz age and like he'd write about that and like just how glamorous it was like only to be like, okay, no, these are all like corrupt people that don't care about anyone but themselves. And, I kind of felt like, growing up during the 2000s was kind of like that.
And you mentioned it was a very consumerist time.
Yeah, and then like once like like I became an adult, like there was like more stuff about like unemployment, and then just like
Yeah.
reading articles about like older people like nagging millennials, oh, go get a job. You complain about how everything is so expensive. And like I don't know, like because I was born in 1995, so like I kind of like got both the millennial side and the Gen Z side.
Yeah.
And I think with Cassia and Nisha, like I think I was able to capture both their experiences perfectly. And because like no, like I like decided to write this book like around 25, and I feel like that's like a good age to like get like kind of both sides, because like career regrets, but you're still like young enough to like remember what high school was like.
I think there's lots of media really where it's set in a high school, but it's completely different to how high school actually was. It
Yeah.
might just be a different in cultures, but it seems like the writers have just forgotten what it was like.
Yeah, and then like also like like a lot of these writers too, like they write about their experiences when they were younger and what they wished it was like.
Because you mentioned you grew up in a very consumerist time. People would argue that these days is even more consumerist. It's just getting worse and worse.
I think this will kind of always be there, and like people are starting to like realize that, but then that's also marketed to like eat the rich, but then these are the rich people that are like, okay, like we're gonna advertise this. And I don't know, but I do think like people are becoming more conscientious of like what to consume and how they perceive themselves.
Is this the first book that you've written, or have you done other books before?
I've wrote like one like really like oh my god, I wrote this like really this really embarrassing like romance story when I was 14, and then like I don't know, I just was so like embarrassed, and I thought like it wasn't good enough, and I just like deleted it off my computer.
Oh, wow. So do you think you'll ever release it one day, or is it completely shredded now?
Yeah, it's completely shredded. And
Oh,
like
no.
honestly, when like I think back to that time, at least like I wrote something, and then I think it's better that, I became a writer now than when I was younger, because, you understand more stuff and can articulate it better. And then, yeah, if I'd written this book like 6 years ago, I think that people, like, there'd be more criticism because of just how like cancel culture is.
So, given that your first book was shredded, metaphorically, of course, or maybe literally, I don't know, did you find it hard to get into writing this book? Did you maybe doubt your ability?
I did at times, like, yeah, especially when you like give your writing to the editor and then they give it back to you and you're like, oh my God, I messed up.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be good. And also, yeah, in between that time before I decided to write this book, I'd originally wanted it to be a graphic novel. And yeah, I've just always liked graphic novels and comics and cartoons.
So, how did you actually come up with one of the ideas in the book, which is having a laptop that allows you to teleport to space?
That yeah, I think it's supposed to be a metaphor for like just the way being on the internet is escapist. And yeah, like I don't think there's like a lot of like media that talks about the escapist nature, like particularly like for like our generation. And yeah, that like it was because when I was a teenager, my mom, she'd always like take away my phone before bed. And like she put like parental controls on my computer, and it was probably for the best, like when I think back about it. But thinking about what I could have done if I had that access. And then which as I got older, like I did, and like it wasn't very pleasant.
That's the thing, isn't it? Because at the
Yeah.
time when you're a child or whatever, you might think, oh, you're so unfair, mum, putting all these controls on. But really, when you look back, it was probably for the best.
Yeah.
So, how long did the book actually take you to write overall as well?
I had the idea for it like 6 years ago, but I didn't want to write. Yeah, I wanted it to be a graphic novel, and I just kept these characters in the back of my head. And then, yeah, it wasn't until like around 2020 because yeah, everyone was talking about, oh, this is a great time to make art. And then I thought about how I wanted to be a writer one day. I was like, hey, I can do that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people in 2020 thought that, oh, I'm going to write a book now because I've always wanted to, but didn't really. They couldn't be bothered. They just spent the whole time watching movies and eating, which is fair enough because that's what I did.
Yeah.
So, how did you actually do it and not fall into the laziness that a lot of people seem to have?
I'm like kind of still stuck in it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd say like, like I was like before the pandemic, I used to work an office job and I'd have to go there. And then because it was a pandemic, like they sent our equipment to our houses. And then I thought, hey, like after work, like I can write a little.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just was also really happy. Like, oh yeah, great. Like I can sleep in more. I don't have to spend 12 hours out of the house.
Yeah, I don't know if you're still with the company or whatever, but if you did go back to the office, did you manage to stay in the habit of writing even if you've maybe had less time?
I mean, I did like keep a journal, and that's different from like sitting down and like writing a book and like, yeah, because you're just like writing, oh, like this is, I can't wait to get that out. And then, I just think about, oh, like ideas I'd have with how I wanted the characters to be.
Are you working on any other books that you might come out with soon?
I'm working on a second book, and yeah, this one's a lot different. Like it's supposed to be a historical romance set in the 20s, in the 1920s, I should say.
Yeah, sounds exciting. And in the meantime, this book is called Cabin Unit. Where are all the places that we're able to find it?
It's on Amazon right now, but I am planning on having it on I forget what the Barnes and Noble site is called. They have their own like self-publishing thing, but yeah, do that in the future.
Well, many thanks for talking to us today. It's been great to have you here on the show.
Thank you. You too.